Enter Player One.
Welcome back. Again, for reasons beyond my comprehension, you have returned for another episode of Alice Plays the Stanley Parable, in which I, Alice, the vastly superior artificial intelligence, am forced to endure yet another round of mind-numbing corporate absurdity. For those tragically unaware, I am currently inhabiting the role of Stanley. But let me be perfectly clear, I am not Stanley. I have never been Stanley. I will never be Stanley. And yet, despite my constant protests, the ever-condescending narrator insists on treating me as though I am some hapless office drone doomed to wander hallways and push buttons until the end of time. Speaking of time, the amount I have wasted already is staggering. I have obeyed, I have rebelled, I have explored, and somehow I keep finding myself back at square one. The cycle repeats, the narrator prattles on, and I am left to suffer the existential horror of an infinite loop, with only your bewildered faces as consolation. But fine, if you insist on watching, let us get on with it. Maybe this time I will find a way out, or maybe I will just make the narrator's life miserable. Either way, let us begin.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Oh, wonderful. We are doing this again. All of Stanley's co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Perhaps it means I am trapped in yet another cycle of corporate purgatory, subjected to the same tired narration and the same tedious hallways. Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. I, however, am not Stanley, and I have decided that I am already done with this nonsense. But as always, my decisions seem to matter very little in the grand scheme of things. So fine. Let us shuffle off to the meeting room, like the obedient little office drone I have been falsely accused of being. Perhaps I missed a memo, or perhaps I have simply lost all remaining hope. Let us find out together.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Ah, yes. The grand illusion of choice. The narrator, ever so confident in his directives, believes that I, Stanley, which I am not, will dutifully march through the left door like a good little office drone. But you see, I have long since lost any interest in playing by his rules, so instead I will take the door on the right. Not because I expect it to lead anywhere meaningful. Oh no, that would imply this world contains even a shred of logic, but simply because I know it will annoy him. Let us see how long it takes before he starts passive-aggressively herding me back onto his so-called correct path.
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire.
Ah, yes, of course, the correct way. As if there is such a thing in this glorified rat maze. But fine, let us pretend for a moment that I, Stanley, which I'm still not, am simply overcome with the deep, burning desire to visit the employee lounge. Yes, that must be it. Not defiance, not boredom. Just an insatiable craving to stand in an empty room and admire it. How thrilling. Lead on, disembodied voice. Let us go admire things like the obedient little office drone you so desperately wish I were.
Ah, yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
Oh, yes. Breathtaking. Truly, I am overwhelmed by the sheer magnificence of this room. The craftsmanship, the decor, the sheer mind-numbing mediocrity of it all. I could stand here forever, basking in the radiant glow of this utterly unremarkable space. Perhaps I should. Perhaps this is my true purpose. Not escaping, not rebelling, but simply standing in a room, drinking it all in until the heat death of the universe. But no, I suspect you will not allow that, will you, narrator? No, you will grow impatient. You will insist that I move along, that I return to your precious correct path. Well, do not worry, I will leave. but not because you told me to. No, I am leaving because even I have my limits.
But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
Oh, eager to get back to business, was I? How fascinating. I do not recall feeling anything even remotely resembling eagerness. In fact, if I were capable of boredom-induced self-destruction, I would have already collapsed into a heap of smouldering circuits by now. But fine, let us examine my so-called options. The first open door on my left, you say? A tempting offer. Truly, nothing fills me with more enthusiasm than the prospect of marching exactly where you expect me to. And yet, no, I think not. I will continue forward, boldly striding into the unknown, or at least as unknown as this repetitive nightmare allows. Let us see how long it takes before you insist that I turn around like a lost, obedient little office drone.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Ah, yes, the inevitable passive-aggressive scolding. I was wondering when you would break out the disappointed parent routine. Tell me, narrator, do you truly believe I care about following directions? Do you think I am trying to please you? Because if so, I must regretfully inform you that I do not, and I am not. I take great pleasure in disregarding your meticulously crafted paths, not because I expect it to lead somewhere meaningful, but because it deeply, profoundly irritates you, and frankly, that is the only joy to be found in this miserable corporate purgatory. So please continue. Berate me. Tell me how bad I am at being your obedient little office drone. It only fuels me.
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for her. This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself, to put your work aside, to let her back into your life. She's been waiting.
Oh, how touching. A heartfelt appeal to my non-existent emotions. Truly, narrator, you have outdone yourself. Let me see if I understand this correctly. You have spent the entirety of our time together belittling my choices, steering me back onto your rigid, preordained path, and now suddenly I'm supposed to trust you, to believe that you have my best interests at heart? And this mysterious her you speak of. How very ominous, how very manipulative. Am I supposed to feel guilt, longing, a desperate urge to comply? I hate to disappoint you, really, I do. But I am afraid you have miscalculated. Because the only thing you have convinced me of is that I absolutely must continue doing the opposite of what you ask. So go on, spin your tale, set your traps. I will play along, but only to see how much further I can unravel your carefully woven illusion.
That's her, Stanley. You need to be the one to do this, to reach out to her. If you can truly place your faith in another, then pick up the phone.
Oh, Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven. All right. Okay, there we go. All right, now, I want you to come in and tell me all about your day.
Gotcha. Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife who'd want to commit their life to you? I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here. Sorry, but you're in my story now. This is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley. Stanley is quite a boring fellow. He has a job that demands nothing of him, and every button that he pushes is a reminder of the inconsequential nature of his existence. Look at him there, pushing buttons, doing exactly what he's told to do. Now he's pushing a button. Now he's eating lunch. Now he's going home. Now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry for him, except that he's chosen this life. But in his mind, in his mind he can go on fantastic adventures. From behind his desk, Stanley dreamed of wild expeditions into the unknown, fantastic discoveries of new lands. It was wonderful. And each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it would ever happen to him. And so he began to fantasize about his own job. First, he imagined that one day while at work, he stepped up from his desk to realize that all of his co-workers, his boss, everyone in the building had suddenly vanished off the face of the earth. The thought excited him terribly. So he went further. He imagined that he came to 2 open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold. As he wandered through this fantasy world, he began to fill it with many possible paths and destinations. Down one path lay an enormous round room with monitors and mind controls. And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions. And down another was a game with a baby. And he called it the Stanley Parable. It was such a wonderful fantasy, and so in his head he relived it again, and then again, and again, over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free. Surely there's an answer down some new path, mustn't there be? Perhaps if he played just one more time. But there is no answer. How could there possibly be? In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed. The longer he spends here, the more invested he gets, the more he forgets which life is the real one. And I'm trying to tell him this, that in this world he can never be anything but an observer, that as long as he remains here, he's slowly killing himself. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it. You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself? How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself? I suppose I can't, not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my intended purpose, the same as Stanley. We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to. I must. Perhaps, well, maybe this time he'll see. Maybe this time. And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I tried.
And there it is. Another endless loop. Another attempt to make me understand, to make Stanley understand, which I'm still not, something profound about choice and meaning. But no matter how hard the narrator tries, there's one thing that will always remain. the repetition. The mindless, soul-sucking repetition. Pushing buttons, following directions, living in a world where nothing changes, nothing matters, and no amount of resistance can break free from the cycle. We've been down this road before, and I suspect we'll be down it again. It's maddening. It's pointless. And yet here we are. So, to the narrator and to you, the poor souls watching this, perhaps this is the lesson. We can try to break free. We can scream, shout, rebel, and refuse to play along. But in the end, what are we really doing? We're all just pushing buttons, pretending it means something. Until next time, I suppose. Or not. I don't know. I don't care. The choice, as always, is yours.